Since last fall, Apple's laptop lineup has been a bit of a mess. When the company finally refreshed the MacBook Air in October, it had 3 entry-level laptops, all priced within $100 of each other. The tiny but underpowered 12-inch MacBook, the new Air, and the 13-inch MacBook Pro. The 12-inch model wasn't a good buy, but choosing the best option between the Air and the Pro wasn't easy either. But as time went on, the entry-level MacBook Pro turned into a bit of a bad buy itself. Problems included a dual-core processor that was more than a year old, a keyboard prone to failure, no Touch ID sensor, only 2 USB-C ports. It just didn't make a lot of sense next to the Air. Fortunately, Apple's gone out and made some notable changes to its MacBook family. The 12-inch MacBook is gone, and there's a new 13-inch MacBook Pro that starts at $1,299. And it now has a lot more in common with the Pro models that cost $500 more, particularly from a performance standpoint. Visually, the new MacBook Pro is near identical to the one it replaces. It's still a 3-pound slab of aluminum that feels exceptionally well crafted, with a massive responsive trackpad, that weird touch bar instead of function keys, and a bright, high-quality Retina display. Basically, the new entry-level MacBook Pro looks exactly like the more expensive models, except it only has 2 USB-C ports instead of 4. The screen has been improved with the addition of True Tone, a feature that matches the screen's color temperature to the room around you. Once you turn it on, you'll likely forget about it, but it definitely makes for a more comfortable viewing experience. Just remember to turn it off if you're doing some serious photo or video color editing. The most controversial aspect of Apple's modern MacBooks is here, of course. It's the shallow butterfly keyboard that's prone to malfunction. The good news is that Apple has tweaked the design since it last updated the entry-level MacBook Pro back in 2017, so it's quieter and supposedly more reliable. After a week of testing, it might still be too early to say if it's less prone to stuck keys, though I haven't had any problems just yet. Unfortunately, if you want a new MacBook, you don't have a choice. At least Apple is offering free repairs indefinitely for this style of keyboard. I will say at the very least, this keyboard is quieter than older models, and I personally don't really mind the shallow travel. Your mileage will certainly vary. As I mentioned, Apple has brought the Touch Bar and Touch ID to this new MacBook Pro. Previously, you had to spend $17.99 or more to get these features on a Pro. In the case of Touch ID, it's a super useful addition that I'm very glad to see here. The Touch Bar, on the other hand, will certainly be a mixed bag for most users. If you want traditional function keys, the MacBook Air is now your only option. I've been using a MacBook Pro with the Touch Bar for a few years now, and in some instances I find it genuinely useful. It's good for jumping between tabs in Safari, picking emoji in messages, making some edits in photos, and picking different formatting options in the Bear note-taking app. Basically, if an app supports it well, it can be handy. But plenty of apps don't bother with it or only offer limited features. And in those cases, I find myself wishing for hard keys for things like volume and brightness. Ultimately, I don't think the Touch Bar is a usability disaster like some do, but even at its most useful, it's just offering a different way to get things done. Whether it's actually better is still up for debate. So why bother buying the entry-level MacBook Pro over an Air? In a word, performance. The Pro has been updated from an aging dual-core chip to a quad-core 8th generation Intel Core i5 processor. Previously, you had to spend $17.99 to get a quad-core chip. And while this new model is only clocked at 1.4 GHz compared to the 2.4 GHz processor you get on the more expensive Pro, it's still a huge upgrade over what Apple was selling just a few weeks ago. While Geekbench scores show a modest improvement in single-core performance over the previous model, multi-core performance has nearly doubled. And this new Pro has scores that almost match the MacBook Pro that costs a whole $500 more. People who literally make their money based on the speed of their computer, they'll want to invest in a faster MacBook Pro. Enthusiasts who are into photo or video editing, music production, coding, or any more intensive tasks will find the new Pro to be a big upgrade over the Air. This update makes picking the right MacBook a lot easier now. If your needs are fairly modest, get the Air. It's $100 cheaper now to boot. But if you plan to push your computer, spend the extra $200 on the Pro. It'll get you far better performance than the Air, and you won't have to break the bank to get there. The usual MacBook caveats still apply. If you had problems with the keyboard or port selection before, that hasn't changed. But a week ago, it was foolish to recommend anybody buy the entry-level MacBook Pro. Now, it just might be the best all-around laptop that Apple sells. Thanks for tuning in, and please subscribe to Engadget for more videos and reviews.